Welcome into a special edition of our Cubs REKAP Podcast, the presentation of our Recap YouTube channel, and available audio only everywhere you get your favorite podcasts. With Gordon Wittenmeyer, who he caught in the middle of chainsawing a tree down that fell in his backyard. I'm David Kaplan. Gordon, we have breaking news here, and that's why we are recording this Cubs REKAP Podcast. Cody Bellinger has decided to stay opting in to the 2025 year on his contract for $27.5 million. He still has an opt-out after the 25 season, and then his contract will be up. So while you and I have talked, as many have who cover the Cubs, about Bellinger opting out and the Cubs then having payroll flexibility to make a few moves, how much do you think, because I don't think it should have a massive effect. Sure, it'll have some. It's a lot of money. But how much do you think this affects Jed Hoyer going forward?
Yeah, Cap, I was thinking about this when it happened, and maybe this is because it's fresh on my mind. I got this tree in my yard. I had to go get a chainsaw so I could cut it apart and get it off the wires out here. I kind of look at it like that, right? Like on Halloween night, this 70-foot tree got blown over in the high winds we had into my backyard. My first reaction was, I'm fucked. Now, that could be your first reaction to Bellinger. But, hey, there's some different ways to look at this. It missed my house. That's a good thing, right? So, but it still hit my wires. It hit my power lines. So I gotta go clean this mess up. I gotta put a lot of work in on it. But at least I know what I'm dealing with. And that's kind of what they're looking at with this. They now know what they're dealing with. It ain't ideal. It could have been worse. There was a point where I know we thought probably more recently that he was going to opt out, but there was a point like quite a bit of the season where we thought, no, he'll probably stick around. This is where they are. It's no different than we thought at various points in the season. He's not a bad player. He's half the player he was, like if you go by Baseball Reference WAR, that as he was the first year as a Cub, same number of games. But those 2 seasons of B WAR were his best since he was an MVP too. So there's that. Like he's got to stay on the field. Be nice if he hit the ball harder more often because his hard hit rate's down, that kind of thing. But at least he's there. Really, honestly, it reduces the amount of creativity you have in the offseason.
Forces you to have to make a bold trade, I think.
Except what are you going to do? Your guy that you wanted to trade all year, Nico Horner, he's coming off of surgery now. So I don't know what kind of value you're going to get there, even if that were something you wanted to do. What are you going to trade?
I mean, look, I would think he would go through some workouts or some testing. If a team was interested in acquiring him, it might prohibit you from trading him because you don't know how he'll perform, and at least it would lower what you're getting back. But I got to move some money. I got to find a way to.
And then what? And then what, Cap? Here's the thing that they should do. If they want to do a bold move, like that creates a deficit. And your best chance to win next year, the way with Bellinger coming back, is run prevention. That's going to be your best way to go because he blocks your ability to add a significant everyday at bat because you got so many positions locked up. But you can reduce, you can do a better job of holding leads, which was a huge problem for half the season. And you can add to a strength that is your starting rotation. And with him back, he is one of your better defenders when he's out there. So you can make run prevention your big strength and your big emphasis. The other thing you can do if you want that bold move, friggin' spend some money because look, you went into the luxury tax this year. Mm-hmm. He'll come off the books in all likelihood next year, maybe, probably, right? And so you can reset after next year if you want. Going over 2 years in a row isn't the worst thing in the world you can do. But if you do that, do it boldly. Do it to take this team that won 83 games and just missed a year ago, won 83 games again and missed by a lot more this year. but is in a division that it might have a chance to win. Go in and try to win this freaking division and spend some money. Go get a bat and do what I said earlier, add to that run prevention emphasis. If you're not going to do that, at least get the pitching you need and essentially don't worry about bats except at the margins.
Yeah, if you run the same exact team out there and all you did was let guys get a little older, okay, maybe Michael Busch gets a little bit better. Maybe Seiya Suzuki gets markedly better or a little bit better.
If you're lucky, PCA is an impact guy.
PCA will get a little bit better. Miguel Amaya might. But I have no reason to believe Dansby Swanson is going to be a better offensive player. He is who he is. Yeah. Now, could Itzhak Paredes be a better player? Maybe.
He was an all-star once.
But if I replace Paredes, I got to spend more money because Willy Adames isn't coming here for cheap. So he's probably out. I'm playing a rookie there. You better believe that Matt Shaw or Cam Smith or James Triantos, any of these guys are going to be an impact player from day one. Because you're not the Marlins rolling in here going, well, let's let the kids play and see what happens. Jed has to win and get to the postseason, or Jed is packing his house up and moving. That's just a fact.
Yeah, his 2 houses or whatever he's got, right? Didn't he buy a house right next door at somewhere out here in the north suburbs?
Maybe.
So I think there's one thing that comes into play here that we have talked about recently, you and I, that could work in their favor, especially if they're willing to go into the luxury tax again, go over that luxury tax threshold. A whole bunch of teams are impacted by the Diamond Sports bankruptcy, the Bally Sports, which is
majority of the teams.
Well, it used to be half, and then a couple of those peeled away. But I think they're only committed to broadcast 1 or 2 right now. And
correct, but there's other teams that maybe aren't with Diamond, but like the Cubs with Marquee, the White Sox with CHSN, they're seeing their revenues dramatically impacted.
However, the teams like the Cubs, now, the Cubs were way behind the curve on starting their own network. They didn't get the impact that the Yes Network did or Nesson or those.
Or the Dodgers.
The Dodgers, right. Okay, so we know that. We know they launched the day, basically more or less the day the pandemic started impacting the economy. And so horrible timing in that regard. And they haven't quite caught up. They haven't achieved anything close to what they had hoped for when they first started that venture as an idea and started putting pieces and people together. Okay, so we know that. But in this landscape, they might be better positioned to leverage resources out of their broadcast deal compared to a lot of other teams. Now, not the biggest of the big boys on the block, but a vast majority. And what that does for them is, with so many teams impacted, most of them, quite honestly, middle and lower level market teams, but it takes them out of some players. It takes more teams out of more player markets, at least at certain price points, right? So now, if you're willing to go into that luxury tax level again for at least 1 more year, you can probably go get some short-term deals, maybe overpay a little bit so that you can reset if you have to. Go in a little hard right now. Go in and get a starting pitcher that maybe you can rely on a little more than what you might have been able to buy at the margins. Definitely get that bullpen fixed with 2 or 3 veteran type guys. And if you want to, since you're going into the luxury tax threshold, over the luxury tax threshold again, maybe go find another bat and then make it fit and make your personnel decisions on where it fits and who gets compromised later in the offseason or in spring training.
What have I told you? Again, I haven't seen their books. I have no idea, but I'm hearing from multiple MLB people that the Cubs actually lost money in 2024.
Nobody lost money.
Huh?
Nobody lost money. If it's compared to a year ago, compared to pre-pandemic, sure, whatever. If you
I'm not saying they did or didn't. I'm not here to defend them. I'm here to just ask the question. And I'm being told by people, not with the Cubs, people in baseball said the Cubs actually lost money this year. It's not like they're going to be a tag day for them, that their TV revenue was dramatically impacted by going to marquee, from the guarantees they used to get to the way that the cable business is going with cord cutting, that they actually, when you take all their expenditures in baseball, they lost money. That's what some in the game believe. If I told you that was true, and again, let me just make it clear to everyone listening, I'm not saying that's true. I'm just telling you what some people are saying. If that's true, where do you think their payroll will be? Because Spot Track, I'm looking at right now, has projected total payroll, includes Bellinger, with pre-arb and arbitration awards, 192.5. Where do they go to?
Similar to this year. Look, man, for years, because of like, let's say your proposal's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Like your premise is correct. They had room to work with for years, with MLB winning the labor war, the labor negotiations on those CBAs, as it pertained to where they set the luxury tax threshold. Oftentimes that luxury threshold went up 1% when industry revenues went up 5 to 8%. So it wasn't, a lot of teams put money in their pockets over the years. Mm-hmm. There was a time when the Cubs, and maybe as recently as, we don't know because their books aren't open, but the Braves are. And so we know that the Braves are owned by a publicly traded company. So we get
Liberty Media.
So we get a glimpse into just how much money and how lucrative this business is for these owners. That luxury tax threshold is arbitrary. And what makes it, other than just the distaste of spending extra tax for no reason other than you're over a level, other than that, the only real penalties are when you start getting into draft position moving, which takes multiple years and certain levels over the threshold. So it's arbitrary. They had the ability. They were one of many, many franchises that had the ability to pay that luxury tax threshold plus 100,000, 200, or 100 million, 200 million more, and still make money or still not go in the hole. So even if they lost money, supposedly, according to this premise, they should still be in position to be at or above the luxury tax threshold.
Agreed, because the value of the franchise has gone from $845 to $5 billion.
Right. And if the luxury tax threshold was related or correlated to what their ability to pay payroll is, it would have been hundreds of millions higher for many teams over the recent decade. So we get caught up sometimes in them giving us information or information being reported in silos of details. But when you relate them all together, nobody's losing money, and they've got plenty of revenues and resources to go as big as they want relative to what they did this year. They can go higher this year. They can go 20 million higher this year. And I think reset if they want after that and not be in terrible position.
So Bellinger's back. He's going to play right field. PCA plays center field. Ian Happ plays left field. Suzuki is your DH. So how do you improve the roster unless you're able to move Michael Busch and a significant prospect to get Vladimir Guerrero?
You want to move Michael Busch?
What's that?
Do you want to move Michael Busch?
No, I'm saying if I had to do that to get Vladimir Guerrero at first base.
Like, you could do that, but you also, like, PCA is left-handed, right? And Bellinger's left-handed.
Yep.
Busch is left-handed.
Yep.
Happ's a switch hitter.
Yep.
I think you're right-handed everywhere else, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you're going to give away one of your highest valued commodities because he's pre-arb under club control and he had a pretty good year and he's left-handed and he's got room to grow at first base, to trade for a veteran right-handed hitter, granted, a star caliber player. But I like having lefties in my lineup. I like having balance. And if you're this sounds crazy, but like Juan Soto, yeah, you want to make some sacrifices, you want to suck it up. I'd go all day long trying to figure out a way to get Juan Soto.
That's not happening. Not that Bellinger stayed. There's no chance.
So then go see what Alonso's market winds up being in this new landscape. He strikes out a lot, but he's a threat. He's a right-handed guy. He's a power guy. He's been on the big stage. He had one of the biggest home runs in the postseason this year. And so he can handle it. He could certainly be an asset to you. And then figure out where he fits after the fact. And if you want to trade somebody after that, fine. I would spend my resource. Look, with Bellinger back, every starting position is accounted for. Basically, depending on what you want to do at catcher. And so your first focus has to be on pouring resources into pitching. It has to be. And then if you can make something else happen with a hitter, yeah, go ahead. And if you want to go in and be aggressive, go ahead. You can figure out the perfect fit, like which of several options you're going to pull a trigger on to make a guy like Alonso or somebody else fit after the fact. Because I'm going to guess this free agency and trade season goes into spring training, because like we've seen in many other years over the last decade plus, this is going to be one of those years, I think, because of a lot of the financial uncertainty.
Well, I think I speak for fans, because I am a fan, that people do not, and I do not want to hear that the Chicago Cubs, because Cody Bellinger stayed, which, by the way, is a contract of their making. It's not like they were forced to take him. No one forced them to backload Jason Hayward, so you're still paying him. No one forced them to give Bellinger a 3-year deal with 2 opt-outs. No one forced them to do any of this. So these are decisions that were made by the front office. So guess what? Figure it the heck out and fix your team, because otherwise they're going to force Ricketts to make a change. They are.
Yeah. And I'd have already made that change. I think there's plenty of evidence there to make that judgment on.
Possibly correct. I'm just telling you that's not going to happen. So that's a discussion we don't have to waste our time on, because he is staying. I mean, the Yankees just saw Garrett Cole opt out of his deal. How much you want to bet Garrett Cole stays with the Yankees?
Yeah, all they got to do is add the same annual contract, one more year, same annual value onto one more year on the back end of that deal, and they keep him.
Who? Garrett Cole?
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll figure something out with him.
Well, they got what is it? 200. What's his contract? 200 and whatever it is. It's $36 million a year for however many years it was, 8 years, whatever. They have to add one more $36 million a year on the end of that, and they keep.
No, one thing, let me just say this to you before we wrap up here. Cody Bellinger had an OPS plus of 111 last season, above league average.
That's above average.
Yeah, down from 139 in 2023. He had 18 home runs. He had 26 the previous season. But he is still a solid major leag player. This is not as though Jordan Montgomery with the Diamondbacks, who was horrible, opted in, obviously, for his $25 million. And they're like, oh, God, we can't even use this guy. He's terrible. This guy's at least a solid player.
He's a solid player. Look, he hasn't been an all-star as a Cub, but with a month to go in the 2023 season, we were discussing him as where's he going to land on the MVP ballot. So there was that. And again, like I said, his WAR value, he was 4.4 last year. He's 2.2 this year, half the player in the same number of games. But those are his top 2 WAR numbers since he was an MVP. So he's a good player. He's not a great player. He's not a $27.5 million player right now, unless he proves different next year. And he played 130 games. That means he missed 32 games each of the last 2 years.
Yep.
And so that's an issue too, is keeping him on the field sometimes when you need him most. So all of that's part of it. Again, it's like this tree that fell in my backyard. At least it didn't hit my damn house.
Exactly.
So
exactly. That's my point. Your tree didn't hit your house, and the guy that opted in with the Cubs, who have a lot of money to spend regardless of whether they lost or not, guess what? That guy's a solid player. It's not as though, as I just said to you, it's Jordan Montgomery or some guy you're like, oh my God, we can't even use this guy.
Right. And I hate to, I'm not casting aspersions or anything, but another guy that just had his option not picked up by the Yankees was Anthony Rizzo. And he's probably done with the Yankees. I don't know where he lands next, but he's had back issues and he hasn't swung the bat the same way over this last year. Bellinger's been more productive.
Okay, so let me ask you something. Does Rizzo go? We'll wrap it on this. Does Rizzo go to the Marlins just to be at home? Maybe.
I think what I think I know about him, he's going to want to keep playing. And I think he's got more in him because mostly it's just been health issues recently. So that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Although he was close to family in New York too. So
Garrett Cole, by the way, our great senior VP of content, Ryan McGuffey, says the Yankees ace, by opting out, the team can ensure he remains in pinstripes by adding an additional year at $36 million to the 4 years, $144 that's still left on his deal.
Right. That's what it was.
So at 34, they're going to have him for 5 more years. You don't hear them crying poor.
They never do. They're the New York fucking Yankees. This should be the Chicago fucking Cubs. This should be the Yankees of the Midwest. They should be the Yankees of either Central Division.
I cannot disagree with you. Gordon, good luck on your tree. Again, the big news, Cody Bellinger is staying in Cubby Blue. He has opted in for the 2025 season. Have a great rest of your day. Please be careful. Everybody. Oh, my God.